I will start my reading practice from the book Magic Words by Jonah Berger. Here I am. Judges, lawyers, and experts used less formal language, please or yes sir, fewer filler words, or er, and fewer hesitations, I mean or you know. They were less likely to hedge or qualify their statements maybe or sort of, and less likely to turn statements into questions. That is how it happened, isn't it? Or he was in the room, was not he? Part of that job could be due to the situation. After all, defendants are on trial. So they might try to be extra polite, hoping they will get off with a lesser sentence. Similarly, judges, lawyers, and expert witnesses have a lot more courtroom experience, so they are probably less nervous. But while some of the variation was certainly driven by roles and or experience, Obar wondered whether something more fundamental might be going on, whether beyond simply reflecting differences in who was talking, the language used might impact how speakers were perceived or the trial was resolved. So, with the help of some colleague, he conducted an experiment. They took a particular case and a particular witness and used across to record two slightly different versions of the witness's testimony. The facts stayed the same, but the language used to express those facts varied. In one version, the witness spoke like the professionals, judges, lawyers, and experts did, and in other, the witness spoke like ordinary people tend to do. For instance, when the lawyer asked approximately how long did you stay there before the ambulance arrived, the witness who talked like the professionals responded 20 minutes, long enough to help Mrs. Davis get straightened out. The witness who talked like an ordinary person said the same thing but hesitated along the way. Oh, it seems like it was about 20 minutes, just long enough to help my friend Mrs. Davis, get straightened out. Similarly, when the lawyer asked, your way around, the witnesses who spoke like the professional just said yes, while the witness who spoke like ordinary people qualified things and said yes, I guess I do. Then, to test whether these differences had any impact, the researchers had different people listen for each recording and make judgments like a member of a jury might. Listeners provided their thoughts about the witness and indicated whether the defendant in the case should pay the plaintiff's damages and if so, how much. As Obar had predicted, slight differences in wording changed how the witness was perceived. Speaking like a professional made the witness seem more credible. Listeners saw them as more trustworthy, competent, and convincing and were more likely to believe what they had to say. And these changes also shaped listeners' reactions to the testimony, even though the facts stayed the same. Hearing a witness who talked like a professional made listeners think like the plaintiff deserved thousands of dollars extra in damage. Obar had uncovered the impact of speaking with power. In the years since then, scientists have refined the exact components of powerful language, but at its core, the main idea remains the same. Speaking with power makes people seem confident, it makes them seem more certain, self assured, and knowledgeable, which makes audiences more likely to listen and change their minds. Trump speaks with power, leadership gurus speak with power, and startup founders, at least the charismatic ones, speak with power. They lay out a vision, a worldview, a perspective, or an ideology that seems so convincing that it's hard to disagree. They seem so confident about what they are saying that it's hard to believe things could be any other way. But speaking with power or confidence isn't something you are born with, it's something you can learn. Four ways to speak with confidence are to: first one is ditch the hedges. The second one is don't hesitate. Third one is turns past into presents. And the final one is know when to express doubt. Now we will go through the first one, ditch the hedges. In 2004, researchers conducted an experiment about choosing a financial advisor. Participants were told to imagine that they had inherited some money and were looking for an advisor to help them invest in. Some of their friends recommended advisor A and others recommended advisor B, so to help them decide they were holding a competition. Each advisor would judge the probability that some individual stocks would increase in value after 3 months. Participants would check the advisor's judgments against the stock's actual performance and hire the advisor whose judgments they preferred. Advisor A, for example, said that there was a 76% chance that a particular company's stock would increase in value, and the stock ended up going up. Similarly, advisor B said that there was a 93% chance that another company's stock would increase in value, and it went up well. After reading a few dozen predictions from each advisor and viewing each stock's performance, participants were asked which of the two potential advisors they would hire. In terms of accuracy, both advisors were equally good. Each was right 50% of the time and wrong the other 50%. Unbeknownst to the participants, though, there was an important difference between the two advisors. Though they were equally accurate, one made judgments that were much more extreme. While their more moderate peer thought a stock had a 76% chance of going up, for example, the more extreme advisor thought it had a 93% chance. And while their more restrained counterpart thought a stock had an 18% chance of going down, the more extreme advisor thought it would be more like 3%. One might think that people would prefer the moderate advisor. After all, they were better calibrated. Given all the uncertainty around performance, their more moderate estimates were more reasonable. But that's not what happened. In fact, when choosing advisors, almost three quarters of people picked the more extreme one. They preferred guidance from someone who expressed greater confidence, seemed more certain, even though that confidence outstripped advisors' actual ability to estimate market trends. And the reason is the same as what drives the power of powerful language. Whether choosing a money manager, listening to a witness, or picking a president, listeners are more persuaded when communicators seem more certain or confident about what they are communicating. Because when people speak with certainty, we are more likely to think they are right. Which candidate will do the best job? It's hard to know for sure. But if one speaks with certainty, it's harder to believe they could be wrong. After all, they just seem so confident. The financial advisors conveyed their confidence through percentages. Their opinions might have been the same, the stock will go up, but they expressed those opinions with differing degrees of certainty. Compared to saying something that has 76% chance of happening, saying it has a 93% chance of happening makes it seem more likely and makes the communicator seem more certain. Words, though, can serve the same function. If someone says it will definitely rain, for example, it suggests there is a pretty good chance it will happen. Maybe not 100%, but 95% or above. If someone says rain is highly likely, though, one might adjust the forecast down a bit, closer to 95% rather than 100%. Words like probable or likely suggest that the chance is lower, more like 70%. About even suggests around a 50% chance, and unlikely suggests that occurrence is even less likely. If someone says there is almost no chance of rain, you would probably put the chance at almost zero. Consequently, words like these not only convey predictions, they also shape action. If someone says it will definitely rain, For example, you might pack an umbrella. Same if someone says that it's clearly going to rain or absolutely going to rain. If someone says that it might rain, it could rain, or it's unlikely to rain, we are less likely to take the same precautions. We infer that there is a lower chance of getting wet, so we might leave the umbrella at home. Just like the financial advisor study, though words like these also shape how certain or confident communicators seem. If someone uses words like definitely, clearly, or absolutely, it suggests a high degree of confidence. They are pretty certain about what's going to happen. It's going to rain, no question. If they use words like might or could, though, it signals more uncertainty. They think it could rain, but they are not really sure. Words like might or could are called hedges. They are used to express ambiguity, caution, or indecisiveness. The same goes for words like guess, speculate, or assume. And hedges extend beyond expressions of likelihood. People can use hedges to express uncertainty about the exact amount of something. I have had this for around 3 months. Uncertainty about what someone else said. According to him, it works well. And uncertainty about whether their opinions will generalize. In my opinion, it's not worth the money. When someone says around, arguably, I believe, generally, kind of, maybe, presumably, rarely, or usually, they are hedging. They are expressing uncertainty in one way or another. We hedge all the time. We note that we think something will work, that a solution could be effective, or that an alternate approach might work better. We suggest that something seems like a good course of action, or that, in our opinion, something else is worth trying. But without our realizing it, hedging can undermine our impact because while we are sharing our thoughts or recommendations, by hedging we are simultaneously undercutting them. We are suggesting that we are not sure those thoughts and recommendations are worth pursuing. Indeed, when a colleague and I asked people how likely they were to follow someone else's advice, adding hedges to that advice make people less likely to go along. They were less likely to buy a recommendation product or adopt a recommended course of action. Because hedges can suggest a lack of confidence saying a solution might work. I think this is best restaurant, or it's probably time to fix the engine. All suggest someone is uncertain. They are uncertain about whether the solution will work, whether the restaurant is the best, or whether it's time to fix the car. And while being cautious can sometimes be a good thing, by making communicators seem less confident, hedges undermine their ability to influence others. If someone is uncertain that a potential solution will work, why move ahead with it? If it's not clear that the restaurant is the best, maybe I will just eat somewhere else. And if the mechanic isn't sure if it's time to fix the engine, not only will I skip the repair, maybe I'll find another mechanic who seems more knowledgeable. That doesn't mean we should never hedge, but it certainly means that we should use hedges more deliberately. Sometimes we hedge on purpose. We want to signal uncertainty, that we are not sure, or that an outcome is unclear. And if that's the goal, hedging can be great. But often we hedge without even realizing it. We are so used to qualifying statements that we toss in a hedge just because. And that's a mistake. People often unconsciously preface things by saying, I think, in my opinion, or it seems to me. But while qualifying statements can be useful in some cases, they often make the subjectivity of what we are saying unnecessarily explicit. When saying things like she is a great hire or we should do this, it's already our opinion. After all, we are the one saying it. So unless we want to signal that it's subjective, prefacing the statement with I think or in my opinion limits our impact. It makes us seem less confident that others will draw the same conclusions, which makes others less likely to follow our lead. To convey confidence, then ditch the hedges, and in their place, do what Donald Trump does instead. Use definites, words like definitely, clearly, and obviously. Remove any shred of doubt. Things are unambiguous, the evidence is irrefutable, and the answers is undeniable. Everyone knows it's guaranteed, and it's precisely what we need right now. Definites do more than signal a lack of uncertainty. They suggest that things are 110% clear. The speaker is confident and the course of action is obvious, making listeners more likely to follow them and whatever they suggest doing. Thank you. That's it for the day.